flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" And they said, "From Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him well." He said to them, Is it well with him?" They said, "It is well, and see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It's not time for the livestock to be gathered together." I think what he's referring to is bringing them into their pens at night. So the sun's not even set, and you guys are getting all here ready to put your sheep into their pens for the night. It's not that time. I would really like you guys to go back out into the fields. And you're thinking, why in the world would he want to do that? Well, apparently a pretty girl is on her way in his direction. So, boys, can you guys clear out of here? I need some space. And they said, well, he says, it's high time. You guys, get out and keep watering. Water the sheep and go. Pasture them. They said, we cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. Well, while he's still speaking to them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran out to meet him and embraced him, kissed him, and brought him into his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are bone of my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me what your wages shall be." And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance, and Jacob loved Rachel. Jacob loved Rachel.
It's a short romance.
Yes, it is. Well, to your outlines, as we talk about these 15, 16 or so verses, just kind of think our way through them. I think as I see this situation of Jacob seeing this girl coming, she's good from far, and she's good from close, because the closer she gets, the more he's trying to get a little bit of time here. But what he doesn't realize is, though it seemed good from far and actually good from near, it was far from good, because it is not going to turn out like he is hoping it's going to turn out. And his mother's desire that he goes and comes back quickly is at least going to take a month, and a month is going to turn into 20 years. Yeah, so it was good from far. She was good from far. She was good from close. But this whole situation was far from good. Jacob assesses the situation carefully and approaches the shepherd. You'll know there's a lot of detail. So he's at some distance, and he's able to discover all that's going on here and how this whole thing is set up. These guys have come, they've nestled their sheep in a time of the day when those sheep should still be out grazing. But because he even tells them, it's too early, why are you... So he's got some familiarity with the process. Why aren't you still out grazing your sheep at a distance? They're all together. Why are they all together? Well, the shepherds probably, trying to make their day as comfortable as they can, sharing stories, a little socialization going on. He's figuring this whole thing out. He sees this well. He realizes there's a cap on the well that has to be removed. And so he's good at assessing the situation, seeing all the details before he moves in. But as soon as he makes this assessment of what's going on, he then moves in and begins conversing with them. So it appears that these shepherds from 3 different flocks, probably 3 different owners, have gathered near a well. They have arrived before the usual time to water and put the sheep in for the night, so they're probably socializing and exchanging news. Once the hour was right, the stone which held the water back, or at least protected it in its current condition from being drawn and put into the trough, was rolled back or pulled out of the way. The sheep were watered and everyone went on their way. There, after assessing the situation, he approaches them to find out where they are from, which will also give him a really good idea of where he is. He may not completely know exactly where he is and where he's got to go to get to his mother's family home. In verses 5 through 8, Jacob learns that he is not only in the right place, but those there know those he is seeking, and before the conversation goes any further, he sees who he has been looking for. You can see God's hand is amazing in the details of this, as much so as his grandfather's servant, who came to this same exact area, asking God to please help him find the right girl for Abraham's son, Isaac. And he tells the Lord, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm going to be doing, and I'm trusting that you'll have the right person at the right place at the right time. So we see God's hand is clearly in putting all these things in place exactly as they're going to need to be. And even having Rachel at that very moment of time. So you wonder, is God sovereign and controlling the details of our lives? Time after time, we're assured that he is. And I don't think we can go, well, that was just for Bible people in Bible times. We could probably spend hours around this room, and if we got enough time, we could share stories of how God worked amazing timing, circumstances, and situations to accomplish exactly what he was going to do. Sometimes we're aware of it, and sometimes we're not aware of it. We drove away from a taco trailer last Tuesday afternoon, realizing that God had put us at a particular spot at a particular time for a specific purpose, and we had no idea until we were in the middle of it. We needed lunch. We were near a really big church in Houston. They were doing lunch. We were just going to go grab a quick little taco. I looked on my phone. There's a taco trailer a couple of blocks away. We missed the turn. We got to go up. There's another taco trailer. We could have gone to that, but let's go to the one that you checked out first. Okay, let's go there. And there's a guy from California sitting on a stoop, down on his luck and circumstances, tatted from ear to big toe, clearly having issues in life. And before it was all done, he was crying, we were crying, we were praying over him, and we drove away and we thought, that's why God brought us to this taco trailer. We try to even enforce, God's brought us here because he's not forgotten you. We're not here accidentally bumping into you today. You needed to hear from the Lord, and God's used us to do that. I think God works those kind of circumstances. You bump into people, you do things, and they're not by accident that God has you where you are doing the things you're doing. Sometimes we're just not aware of it. And he's aware of it because he's all of a sudden like, woo! He's coming, But I think God does those kinds of things in our lives. And we just need to be aware of it and being bold enough to take those steps. Like, what's God want to do? I'm going to take some steps. I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to make an introduction. I'm going to make an invitation and just see where God goes with this. Because maybe he's using me right now because he's working in these people's lives, and he's going to use me just at this moment as his tool to do what he needs to do in their circumstance. So Jacob finds himself right in the middle of this. I don't know that I think he must be, because he spends a lot of time with his mom. And I can't imagine that she didn't tell him the story of when she met when she met Isaac, and how God had worked all that can't imagine he doesn't have that in his head, and he's going like, oh, this is like exactly what happened to my mom. And I'm thinking he's getting, those things might be going on in his head. I think Jacob is, though, as he tries to, God is working all this out, and what is he trying to do? He's trying to manipulate the situation. He's used to telling people what to do, and he's probably a little bit upset about the response of these herdsmen. He wants them out of there, because he's going to control this narrative. God is working his exact plans, and what does Jacob want to do? He wants to control the narrative. So you guys got to go, because she's coming, and I need some space, and you're going to get in the way, and I don't want you to see what's going to happen here. And so he's trying to control this narrative. He has observed the whole situation. He's considered his situation, and he's probably ready to go into negotiations with them of how to get them out of there. But before he can get any farther in his negotiation, Rachel is on the scene. He's probably struck by the similarities of the story of his mother, that his mother undoubtedly told him of her first encounter with Isaac. He's thinking that the same thing might be happening all over again. And there is that struggle that we have with God and his plans and his purposes and his exact intentions, and then us trying to control it and negotiate it and get it like we think it needs to be, rather than just like realizing God has got this and he's doing what he's going to be doing, and he's going to use me to be a part of it. And I don't have to be in control. I can just move with what he's doing and how he's doing it. In verse 9, we really can't fail. That should be can't. We can't fail to observe the contrast between Jacob and Rachel. You think about this, the girl that he meets is, we don't know much about them, but we know that there's a lot of contrast between the two of them. Jacob is a mom's boy. Rachel is her father's shepherdess. Jacob, we're told, hung out around the house. Rachel is off in the fields all day long with the livestock. Rachel, according to most commentators, was in the Hebrew text the shepherdess of her father, meaning the chief of the shepherds, implying that she oversaw others who helped her take care of the flock. I doubt Jacob was ever in charge of taking care of the flock. He's in doing other things. Why? The question I started thinking about was, well, what was the significance of men being out there in the fields tending the sheep, but having a girl out there? Was that unusual? Most of the commentators said no, it wasn't unusual. Girls often were shepherdesses, and it was not seen as anything that a woman shouldn't be involved in. But I started thinking, well, why was this second daughter in the fields? Were Laban's sons too young? Genesis 31:31 tells us that he had sons. They are jealous of Jacob later in the story. So it's not like there weren't boys in the family. Were Laban's sons doing something more important? I don't know. Were Laban's flocks small and manageable by Rachel and a few helpers, and he didn't need all of his sons out there? That seems to be implied in Genesis 30:29 and 30, when Jacob and Laban kind of come to a little face-to-face confrontation as Jacob is trying to remove himself from Laban's control. In Genesis 30:29, Jacob says to Laban, "You yourselves know how I have served you and how your livestock have fared with me." So apparently Jacob had taken over control of the livestock of this man, and they had done very well. Verse 30, he says, "For you had little before I came." So is it that the little herd of Laban is not really all that big? It's not doing all that well, so she can easily manage that. The boys don't have to be a part of that. I don't know, but for whatever reason, Rachel finds herself as the shepherdess of her father's flock, and apparently it's not doing all that great. But that may have nothing to do with Rachel and everything to do with her father. Because as we're going to see, this guy is just, you want to talk about a negotiator and a deal maker and a mover and a shaker. You thought Jacob was. Laban really has it up on Jacob. At the top of page 27, The contrast would make an interesting match between these two individuals. Now there's another daughter who would possibly be more similar in nature to Jacob, and that was Leah. And it's interesting that he's not attracted to Leah, but he's very attracted to Rachel, who really is more like his brother, an outdoorsman, which is kind of interesting. You know, he's got this issue with his brother all this time, and then he finds a girl who does a lot of things that his brother kind of liked to do, and he's very attracted to her. That opposites attract, yes, until they don't. Opposites attract until the opposite gets annoying, right? And then you got to figure out how do you work with that, because yeah, the opposites are very attractive until they're not. But there's a whole marriage conference on how do the opposites not become annoying and remain that attractive part of that person that you're in a relationship with. But yeah, that opposite attraction, I think, is part of this.
But Leah has weak eyes.
Yeah, and most commentators, you know, you pick up 10 commentators and you'll get 10 different ideas of what that means. He's not attracted to her as much as he is
She
Rachel.
was squinting, she was nearsighted.
Yeah, that's one of them. One guy said, no, it had to do with something, some kind of an eye issue, and so she's having to be inside a lot because the glare and the brightness of the sun, so she was probably pale. I mean, I'm telling you, you pick up 10 commentators on Genesis chapter 29, you will get 10 different answers as to what that meant. We'll have to ask Moses when you get there. What did you mean by she had weak eyes? I don't know. She wasn't the one for him. That's all. So upon seeing her though, he has an immediate reaction. He reveals he has considerable strength that he uses to address her need, which I think is a very great sign of chivalry in masculinity. There's 3 guys there that are waiting for some more to move the stone. And I don't know whether, he's got a little rush of adrenaline because the heart is now, like they said on Bambi, he's got a little Twitter-pated going on. And so he's just able physically on his own strength to show off his guns and that. And he just moves that whole rock out of the way by himself. And these other 3 guys were going to need a 4th to move it, but he's got that adrenaline, testosterone pumping through him now, and he's going to show her, that he's worth every bit of it. And so he pulls that stone out of the way and he waters and takes care of her. I think that's a wonderful sign of his masculinity, that his desire is to use his attributes to serve her, and that will become the model of Christian masculinity for the rest of the scriptures, with Jesus being the greatest example of masculinity in his servanthood, servant masculinity, servant leadership that he exhibits.
Wouldn't it have been God's power that he used?
Could have been the Lord giving him the strength to move that rock. Wherever he got the wherewithal, he uses it for, because he could have used that same wherewithal to run these guys off, right? Could have bowed up and had a little confrontation and like a Clint Eastwood movie, just drove these men out, and cleared the field single-handedly, but he doesn't. His strength that he has is used for blessing her. He reveals he is pretty open to showing affection, which may have been a little unusual because he kisses her, like right there, and I don't think it's the kiss that he gives to Laban, because in a little bit, Laban's going to greet him, and Laban and him are going to exchange kisses. I don't think that's the same kiss, and probably not with the same intention. It also reveals he's a pretty emotional guy. Probably why he wanted to be alone with her. He breaks down in tears. Maybe a long journey, he's like, he's on edge after, this ordeal of leaving home and this long wilderness wandering, whatever it is, she's caught him at a moment where he is vulnerable, and he's okay showing it. However, nothing is recorded as to the response of the other shepherds. We have no idea how they respond or that moment or even yet in the future. I thought Rachel's response was funny though. What did she do? She just runs away. Like, I don't know what this is all about. This boy just kissed me and I'm running. I'm out of here. So she takes off and runs home to tell her dad all these things that are going on. So his response is to serve her, and he's been pretty forward. And she runs, which like, maybe that was good. Verses 13 and 14, Laban, Rachel's father, then responds. Laban runs to meet him. Laban embraces and kisses him, which in that time, and even to this day in Middle Eastern culture, and being in Lebanon, in Jordan, Israel, Egypt, in that area, it is much more appropriate for men to kiss each other cheek to cheek in public than for a man and a woman to do so in public. Men and women do not, in my experience, show public affection in Middle Eastern culture. It would be much more appropriate. So the fact that these two men kiss cheek to cheek and embrace would have been very acceptable. She's probably thrown off by it because that's not something that is seen publicly, and there's 3 shepherds that she probably knows who have now witnessed this and makes her feel somewhat uncomfortable. Laban then welcomes him to the family, and I think the reason for that is because Laban sees dollar signs when he sees Jacob. You're saying, where did you come up with that? Look at Genesis chapter 24. Starting with verse 24, 29. Abraham's servant has arrived on the scene and has been assisted by a young girl who's come out to water his camels. Rebecca has been gracious and kind to him, and so, what did I say, 29? Yeah, starting in 29. The young woman ran, told her mother's household. Rebecca had a brother whose name was Laban. Laban ran out towards the man to the spring as soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms and heard the word Rebecca, the words of Rebecca, his sister. So he's seeing, like, this girl has just watered camels, and now this man has adorned her with probably a fortune in jewelry. And as soon as he sees that, he's going to make a beeline for this guy. He does all the negotiation, helps negotiate this man coming, staying in their home, rolls out the red carpet, starts the negotiation for his sister, and in verses 52 and 53, it pays off. Then Abraham's servant heard their words. He bowed himself to the earth before the Lord, and the servant brought out jewelry of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave her brother, Laban, and her mother costly ornaments. So now the boy, who's the grandson, has just arrived. The servant brought incredible wealth with him in his pursuit of a girl. I wonder if this boy is going to bring tremendous wealth that I can somehow cash in on as well. I think Laban is seeing some opportunity here, probably first of all not knowing what this boy has brought with him. If it's anything like his grandfather gave to his servants, Laban's in for a windfall. And I think he's hoping that this young man has come into his house with similar possibilities. The end of verse 14, we're told that Jacob ends up staying for a month. And I'm thinking to myself, doing what? What does a guy who really seems to have just left home and under the close care of his mother do while he's sitting around somebody else's house for a month? Probably hanging out with Rachel and living off the host like he did when he was home. And so I think Laban is going to make Jacob play his hand and move this situation along. He's been there a month. He's discovered he doesn't have any gold, doesn't have any treasure. So now I got this deadbeat boy who's come into my house. He's living off of us. I've welcomed him in his family. He doesn't have much to offer, and I gotta move this along. And so I think he is tired of him just hanging out, doing nothing, and he realizes early that Jacob came with no treasures to negotiate. So in a very diplomatic way, he's gonna make Jacob get busy or get out. He asked him how much he is worth. He is either going to get him as a laborer at a carefully negotiated price, or Jacob is going to have to go elsewhere. Look, you're family, and I just can't, I feel bad about you working around here and doing things around here. How about I pay you? How much are you worth in order to work for me? I want to treat you like family, and that forces Jacob to either go, I'm worth this much and I'm ready to go to work, or he's like, I'm out of here. I think it's a diplomatic way of Laban getting Jacob where he wants him. He will negotiate the wages, so that I think if Jacob had said, I'm worth this much, Laban, as we'll see as the story unfolds, has the negotiating ability that the wages, by the time that it was said and done, Jacob would probably owe him money rather than having Laban owe him money. Because I can just see, as the story goes on, Laban's the kind of guy that would go, okay, so I'm going to pay you $20 an hour, but you realize that living in my house, I'm going to charge you a little rent, and then there's going to be food, and then you're probably going to need some more clothing, so I'll charge you. Jacob would have ended up owing him money by the time it was all said and done. That's the kind of shrewd negotiator Laban is. However, also I think in Laban's mind is the idea that he might get Jacob's labor for free by the hands of his daughters, because he's got nothing with him to pay as a dowry, to give in return for this girl. And I think Laban is going, I'm either going to get him to work for me for a wage that I'm going to end up taking from him, or I'm going to get him to work for me for nothing, because he loves my daughter and he's got nothing to give me. I'm going to get him. So by now Laban has realized what the text reveals to us in verse 18, and that is Jacob is smitten. And what Jacob has been doing to others for years is about to happen to him. I couldn't remember, is it what goes around comes around, or is it what comes around goes around? I can't remember. It was something like that, but that's what's going to happen to this young man. Laban has figured out a way of getting rid of both daughters and coming out way ahead. This boy has no idea what is about ready to happen. And that's where we'll pick up next week. But I think that in all that, the whole story begins by reminding us of how much God is orchestrating all of the circumstances, the timing, and the people right where he wants them. And even though both these men think they're going to be the ones that are going to control the narrative, when it's all said and done, God still has exactly what he's trying to accomplish at the end of those 20 years of time. And I think that's a great lesson for us to continue to remember and to just enjoy being in a relationship with a God who's got it all planned out. He has in advance, Paul says in Ephesians 3:28, we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God has foreordained. I think that in advance God has planned out the circumstances and the situations in our lives. And we just need to enjoy and trust in a God that's that powerful and mighty and has good plans and intentions for us, that we can trust in him and not feel like we got to control it and work the narrative to get out of it what we want to get out of it. That's going to create all kinds of trouble for the next 20 years in this family, and it does in ours as well. Thanks for being here tonight. Bring somebody with you in December, because there's lots of things to invite people to in December. And so come and join us and have a great